Si comprehendis, non est Deus. That's what St. Augustine famously said back in the 4th century. If you understand God, what you understand is not God. Welcome to TV, Tennessee Valley Church. Thank you for joining us. Psalm 2, verse 11, taken from the Message translation, will guide our thoughts today. Worship God in adoring embrace, celebrate in trembling awe. Today we're talking about the mystery and fear surrounding God. Whenever we think we have defined God, we've actually concealed Him, for God is undefinable. Whenever we have understood God, we've actually misunderstood Him, for God is unfathomable. Whenever we limit God to our level of understanding, we have invented our own God, for God is unlimitable. God is bigger than our words, bigger than our brains, bigger than our boxes, and bigger than our categories. Remember Augustine's words. If you understand God, what you understand is not God. Let's talk about mystery. The ways of God are mysterious. Romans 11, verse 33 reads, "Oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable His judgments and His paths beyond tracing out." Deuteronomy 29:29 reads, "The secret things belong to the Lord our God." The ways of God are mysterious indeed, but mysterious does not mean irrational. As Dennis Covington has written, mystery is not the absence of meaning, but the presence of more meaning than we can comprehend. Let's look at a few of the mysteries of the Lord. First, creation. How is it that there was nothing and then there was something? How is it that your eye is more complex than the James Webb Telescope? How is it that baby cicadas can lie dormant underground for years and then emerge to make as much noise as a jet engine? Creation is a mystery. Next, the Trinity. Let's consider the Christian teaching of the Trinity. One God in three persons. God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. Three persons, one God. All the words I, or even those far more intelligent than I, use to speak of the Trinity fall far short of the ultimate reality of who God is. All our metaphors and similes, all our models and theories of the Trinity, they all fall short. The story is told of St. Augustine of Hippo, a great Christian thinker from the 4th century. He's the guy I quoted at the beginning. Augustine wanted badly to understand the doctrine of the Trinity, one God in three persons, and he wanted to be able to explain it logically. One day, Augustine was walking along the beach pondering the Trinity, God in three persons. Suddenly, he saw a little girl all alone on the beach, as if she had just appeared. The little girl dug a hole in the sand, ran to the sea with a little cup, filled her cup with ocean water, ran back and emptied the cup into the hole she had dug in the sand. Back and forth, she went to the sea, filling her cup and pouring the ocean water into the little hole. Augustine asked her what she was doing. The little girl replied, "I'm trying to empty the sea into this little hole." Augustine asked her, "How do you think you can empty this immense sea into this tiny hole with this tiny cup?" The little girl responded, "And how do you suppose that with your small head you can comprehend the immensity of God?" With that, the story goes, the child disappeared. Now, I don't know if that actually happened, but it certainly reminds us of how incomprehensible is the Bible's mysterious teaching that God is one, and yet God is Father, Son, and Spirit. We've talked about the mystery of creation and the mystery of the Trinity. Now, let's talk about the mystery of evil. How could a good and powerful God allow evil in the world? Whether that evil is a child molester or a deadly tornado. How could God allow that? There's a whole area of theology called theodicy, attempts to explain how a good and powerful God could allow evil. And yet the best thinkers and ponderers have not been able to think and ponder sufficiently to know the answer. There are mysteries beyond our capacity to grasp, including why bad things happen to good people. A pastor, L.D. Johnson, struggled with that mystery. Years ago, his daughter, Carol, died in a terrible accident on an icy road just before Christmas. Pastor Johnson ultimately decided it boils down to trust. Years after the heartbreaking accident that took his daughter, Johnson wrote, "God can be trusted. In the last analysis, Christians have no more persuasive word. God can be trusted. That does not resolve all the mysteries or answer all the questions, but it gives us enough to build our lives around. God is trustworthy." Now, I can't understand the mystery of why God allows bad things to happen, but I choose to believe He is trustworthy. Now, let's talk about the mystery of atonement, how the death of Jesus made possible our at-one-ment with holy God. Through the centuries, there have been multiple theories of the atonement as Christian thinkers have struggled to understand the mystery of what happened at the death of Jesus and how that makes possible our forgiveness by God. Each of these theories has something to offer as we try to understand the rich, profound, multifaceted truth behind Jesus' death on our behalf. And yet not one of them is adequate on its own. Even together, they fail as an adequate explanation of the wondrous cross. Whether it's creation or the Trinity or the problem of evil or the atonement, as people of faith, we have to be okay with mystery. Leonard Sweet suggests that the person of faith should be content not to understand such mysteries as why a spotted animal can have a striped tail, but a striped animal cannot have a spotted tail. And even deeper mysteries, he said, like why a person with a small bladder always gets the window seat on an airplane. And even the mysteries, he said, even the mysteries surrounding God. There are mysteries we will not solve this side of heaven. And in heaven, quite frankly, solving those mysteries might just seem unimportant. Well, we have established that there are lots of mysteries surrounding the ways and person of God. But what about fearing God? We'll talk about that when I come back in a few minutes.
Like adults, it's common for children and teens to have feelings of fear and anxiety, but sometimes that anxiety can interfere with their well-being. Dr. Edgar Finn joins us from WES, the Wellstone Emergency Services here in Huntsville. First of all, Dr. Finn, welcome to Huntsville. You've just moved here from Mobile.
Yes, thank you very much. It's nice to be here. It's a great city.
Dr. Finn, how can we know when anxiety is an issue for our children and teenagers?
Well, I think we have to remember that anxiety is a normal emotion to feel. Anxiety is probably the most common emotion across the spectrum of emotions that we might feel, and it's normal to have some degree of anxiety, especially when you're in unfamiliar situations or when you're around unfamiliar people or in unfamiliar places. When we find that anxiety is a problem is when it gets in the way of our personal growth, when it starts to limit our opportunities, when it begins to affect our mental health.
Dr. Finn, how would we know if our child or teen actually needs professional help?
I think getting back to that idea about function, I think when you see your child starting to have difficulty functioning, especially in their academic arena, that's their work of the day, basically. 5 days a week, they go to school and they have certain expectations that they have of themselves and that you may have with them. When you start to see them struggle academically, that's a clear and obvious sign. When you start to hear from them that they're having difficulty engaging with their peers, or when you find themselves isolating and staying away from peers and not going out and enjoying times with their peers, that sort of thing, they might be having some difficulty with social engagement, and that can be an indication as well. And there are very good treatments for many of the issues that are manifestations of anxiety. One of them is a therapeutic technique that's well known and well documented called cognitive behavioral therapy.
What can we as parents do to help our children and teens with anxiety?
Talking to your children and your adolescents and keeping lines of communication is so very critical. I can't stress that enough. I think that you've got to find ways to communicate and keep those lines of communication open over the course of time. I think one way to do that, for instance, is to identify those things that tend to isolate us from our adolescents or our teens, whether it be our own use of internet web surfing or social media or staring at our phones, doing video games, things like that. I think we have to be very careful about setting an example and identify those things that take us away from from engaging with our kids more actively. You've got to find ways to engage with your adolescent and your child. And typically that means engaging one-to-one, but sometimes in groups as well. And so I think, for instance, having particular times of the day when you've got media-free times, when the TV is turned off, when the cell phones are off the table, and you can have like mealtime together. That, for instance, would be a very positive thing to have as a family, is have just mealtime together. Have conversations with your kids. Go on little outings with your kids. Do things that are fun. Do things especially that aren't planned. Do things impulsively. Take your kids out to go get some ice cream. Take your kids out to go to the bookstore if they like books, or go to the library if they like books, that sort of thing. Engage your kids in times when they're behaving well and when things are good. That's the time when you need to engage the kids. I work here at Wellstone, and right next door is this big, huge, beautiful, absolutely wonderful park, John Hunt Park. I think going out to the park, for instance, going for a walk or finding other things you can do, a bike ride or play some volleyball, that sort of thing, those kinds of activities can be very helpful, not only to target anxiety, but to engage and communicate with your kids.
Oh, great advice. Meal times together, stay away from the phone, have media-free times, and I really like the one, go get ice cream together. Love that.
Yeah, go to Handel's and get some ice cream. It's wonderful.
Especially on a day like today.
Especially a day like today that's so hot outside, yes.
Thank you, Dr. Finn.
Thank you.
Today is not just about mystery, it's about fear of God. Remember the verse that is guiding our thought today, Psalm 2, verse 11 from the Message translation. Worship God in adoring embrace and celebrate in trembling awe. Yes, trembling awe. Because God is so far beyond this. Because God is powerful beyond measure. A healthy fear of God is appropriate. Listen to these important verses. Matthew 10:28. Do not be afraid of those who can kill the body but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Luke 1, verse 50. His mercy extends to those who fear Him from generation to generation. Philippians 2, verses 12 and 13. Paul tells believers to work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, since God is working in you. 1 Peter 2:17, honor all people, love the family of believers, fear God, honor the King. That's just a sampling. The Bible speaks a great deal about fearing God. So what does the Bible mean when it tells us to fear God? Laura Jackson is the wife of our church's minister of music, Aaron Jackson. In her book, Holy Gravity, Laura talks about the fear of God. Laura notes the distinction made by Martin Luther. He's the one who sparked the Protestant Reformation back in the 16th century. The difference between servile fear and filial fear. Servile fear is the kind of fear, Luther said, that a prisoner would have had of a guard or a slave would have of a master, the fear of pain. Filial fear, on the other hand, is different. Filial comes from the Latin word for family. It's the fear that a child might feel of disappointing his or her loving parent. So, if we're talking about the fear of God, a servile fear is the fear of God's wrath. A filial or family fear is the fear born out of reverence, trust, awe, humility, and gratitude. And in the Bible, we're actually taught both. As Laura Jackson writes, it's not either or for Christians, but a both and. To merely be afraid of punishment is a less than mature spirituality. However, to revere God's holiness, to respect His justice, to know God could squash us like a bug and leave nothing but a greasy spot if He wanted to, and thus to tremble a bit, well, that's appropriate and healthy. The Hebrew prophet Isaiah encountered God and cried, "Woe is me!" We ought to live with a healthy fear of God. One of the most powerful experiences I ever have had was in the modest sanctuary of the Lucas Grove Baptist Church, the first church I served as pastor. This was nearly 40 years ago. I had walked across the parking lot from our house to the church on a Saturday evening to pray in preparation for the next day. I don't think I was doing anything different from what I normally did. I was just praying. And yet I suddenly sensed the overwhelming presence of God's Spirit. It was so real, so palpable that I was afraid to open my eyes. Yes, I was afraid. It was not a fear of being harmed, but a fear of being overwhelmed. Now, I know God is Spirit and so He's invisible, but it was just so overwhelming that I felt like if I opened my eyes, I'd be looking at God, and I just wasn't ready for that. It was an incredible, almost indescribable experience. I kind of felt like Isaiah did. Woe is me. That experience on a Saturday night in a country church is what I think of when I think of the fear of God. The awe, the wonderment, the bewilderment, the reverence. I've talked about the mystery of God and a healthy fear of God. Let me try to bring the two together by telling you about my father. Now, everyone does not have a warm, fuzzy feeling when God is referred to as Father. I'm grateful that I do. I'm grateful that my earthly father, though imperfect, helped me understand my heavenly Father. I think I can summarize what I've been trying to say today about the mystery and the fear of God by telling you about my dad. I was a daddy's boy. Among my favorite memories of childhood is sitting with him in his recliner. I remember sitting with him on Saturday nights watching TV. Our favorite show was Gunsmoke, a Western that came on every Saturday. My dad and I used to walk together to church often. We'd go fishing. I adored my dad. But he was not my pal or my peer or my paisano. He was not my bro or my bruh or my bestie or my BFF. He was my father, and that meant something. I had a healthy fear of my father. I remember one night when I was a kid and stayed out too late, past the time I was supposed to be home. I was at the bottom of the hill from my house. My dad came and got me, and when I saw him coming, my heart stopped. I knew I was in trouble. He whipped me all the way up the hill to our house. I think every time I'd jump, and I think every time I hit the ground, he'd pop me. Yes, it was stern discipline. No, it was not abuse. And yes, I deserved it. I never once, though, not that time or any other of the times he disciplined me, I never thought he was just taking out his anger on me. I knew it was discipline. So yes, I had a healthy fear of my father, and I had a great respect for my father. Last week, our family was at Orange Beach for family vacation, 8 adults and our 7 grandkids. It was wonderful. I was sitting on the beach one morning watching the little ones play in the shallow water when I thought about one of my earliest memories. I was riding my little green dinosaur floaty in the ocean. It didn't look exactly like this, but you get the picture. Those were the days before the flotation devices that all kids now wear around their chests and arms. I was just floating on my floaty, and I turned over, and I was in trouble. I was a little guy, but I remember my panic. I came up grasping for air, and I was eye level with the beach itself. I could see my father running into the ocean toward me. That scene is burned on my memory. I don't remember the moment he grabbed me and pulled me out. I just remember seeing him running, me eye level with the sand, my father high-stepping, raising his knees high in the shallow ocean water to get to me as quickly as possible. A man with a profound love for me, with the power, the strength to do for me what I could not do for myself, and a determination to get to me. I had a great respect for my father. I respected his power. Here's my point. I adored my dad, and I never doubted his undying love for me. And yet I knew there was a distance between his place in the family and my place in the family. His strength, his power simultaneously scared me and comforted me. Remember our verse for the day, Psalm 2:11. Worship God in adoring embrace, celebrate in trembling awe.
How deep the Father's love for us, how vast beyond all measure, that He should give His only Son,
Hi everyone, I'm Holly Knupp, Minister to Median Adults at First Baptist Huntsville. We are folks in our 40s and 50s, married, single, and empty nesters. We'd like to invite you to any of our in-person studies, small groups, or social events. Check out our website or email me at holly@fbchsv.org for more information. We look forward to building community and growing our faith together with you.